What's up, guys? Thank you for clicking on the video. So I have a few videos coming here in succession. If you're a follower or sub of Night Drive TV, you know that I'm working on some headlight projects, some things that have to do with Corvettes, some off-roading projects, but occasionally I scrutinize or I add to a video that I've seen from another automotive YouTube channel that I tend to follow, quite honestly, and SavageGeese is in for the two-time here, because I have gone after a SavageGeese video in the past, and I say gone after in the fact that they make fantastic videos, but in the C5 Z06 review, I felt the need, because I've had that car for so many years, to kind of add to it and counter some of their arguments, so to speak. But in this one, they just did an incredible video they just released on the Toyota LFA, or the Lexus LFA. And I have a kind of unique connection to that car, and I can tell you that watching the video, it was a fantastic experience in understanding a car that when I experienced it in 2010 as a pre-production model, I actually drove the prototype, one of their mules, so to speak. You know, it brought everything home for me of what made that car so special. So if you watch that video and you're a collector, if you're someone who has interest in that car and would like to just get a little bit more information or perspective, I'm going to use archive video, and this is not going to be an all talking video. I'm going to kind of take you back to September 2010. In the midst of the downturn, when Toyota finally released this car after years and years of development. I'm going to show you what happened. I'm going to talk a little bit about the perspective I have of that car from then till now, and things that you might be interested in hearing that the geese left out. So stick around. You're watching Night Drive TV. So guys, let me give you a brief insight into how I came to cross paths with the Toyota LFA pre-production prototype back in 2010. Essentially, I had worked my way up through having multiple shops doing dyno tuning, fabrication, forced induction systems, things like that, to where I had ended up partnering and getting involved with a business that was basically, its core business model was to build these tube chassis, kind of street legal, but also very road course capable track cars that were somewhat closely based around a lot of the engineering components of Corvettes, C5 Corvettes and the LS platform. So these were mid-engine cars. These were kind of to meet this demand that has kind of been there for quite some time for mid-engine Corvettes. But essentially these cars, they were turnkey. We were able to build them to spec, to a customer's requirements in terms of color and basic things, and deliver that car for about 130 grand or so, roundabout. And so my goal was to reach out to certain club tracks and access their members, bring the car out, either do a lease agreement to where people can lease the car on a, say, on a day-by-day basis.
Our new fleet of MMC spec Caymans are complete. Those will be used for the Race of Champions race, race school, and they can be rented on any member day.
Rent it, so to speak, and use it on track, or potentially buy it, or even have a club series to where we built a very basic version of this car, and it could be used for, you know, say a 10-car field in a club track environment. So I contacted Ari Strauss and Chris Valletta, who were kind of the leadership in Monticello Motor Club in 2010. I kind of conveyed the desire to do this. They were looking to start a club series, and so what they basically said is, I think you should come out and kind of see how we handle this type of situation. And we have Toyota coming out here with a car called the LFA. They're marketing it to our members, and their members, you have to know, with Monticello Motor Club, are extremely wealthy. So basically Toyota was going to bring the car out to Monticello, allow the members to drive this car. And so essentially that was the scenario. I was going to come out, kind of observe how that process happened, but I was pretty much assured that you're going to be able to drive the LFA and kind of get that experience as well. So I arrived in Monticello in September. The yellow LFA that was there is actually, I believe, the only LFA that Toyota still owns. This was the car that they ended up using for a lot of marketing. So essentially this car was pre-production, hand-built by the engineers. So, you know, we were able to walk around the car. The car had basically a tech that traveled with the car for its entire duration of wherever it toured and went at that point in time. And he, you know, kept a constant look on the car, checking fluids, looking at brakes, things like that. But the car was literally lapping all day long, from, you know, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., 4:30 p.m. or so, small break for lunch, but that was essentially what was happening. The members were coming through, they were driving the car. There was an opportunity to pick colors, pick calipers, all the options that is presented in the SavageGeese video. That's exactly the same options they had at the time. The deal with the LFA is in 2011, the first cars were going to come out. They were going to be standard colored cars only. If you selected an optional color, that extended your production date out further. And most of those cars, I believe, ended up as a 2012. I believe a few members at that event, actually, at least one that I know of, did buy the car at that point. But, basically how we were prepped was it was going to be a lead follow situation. They had a race car driver, I believe, Scott Sharp, at the time. He was going to kind of do a lead follow. We did hit some speeds. I hit about 167 miles per hour in the car. But for the most part, approaching braking zones, things like that, there were some margins. But I was extremely impressed with the car. We did some recon laps in a CTSV initially. I'd never been to Monticello before, so I needed to learn the line. Chris Valletta and I went out in a 6-speed CTSV. Kind of got familiar with the line and the braking points for that car. And then, shortly thereafter, I went out in the LFA. So the LFA experience was extremely unique. The car is extremely special in so many ways, especially in 2011 or 2010. What struck me immediately was just the very unique nature of the way that the interior was put together. It struck me as very refined at the time. Airbag in the seatbelt, which I found pretty unique. Just all the interfaces, and it just felt like an extremely exotic car. And I had been in Lamborghinis, Ferraris, we had them. This felt like a step above those in many ways. And the unique digital cluster that was put in the car because of the rev speed of the V10 that they talked about in the SavageGeese video, it was necessary. They said no analog gauge would keep up with the motor. So all these things struck me immediately as very unique, but I can tell you that until you experience the LFA from inside, to hear the car, to feel the car and the way that it shifts, it's a very unique experience, and it's unlike any car that I had driven or driven to date. Because it kind of does mix this. They had such a long development time with that car, with the transmission and the unique way that it shifts, that it is a single clutch. It is almost basically an automated manual versus like a hydraulic dual clutch like you see in Ferraris and GTRs and things like that. This was, kind of physically, it felt like you were shifting, but you just physically were only hitting a paddle. But everything in the car was just done with such an attention to detail, like they talk about. But the sound, even through my helmet, was incredible. I almost couldn't believe that it was real. And I can tell you the way that Yamaha funneled that sound through the cabin and around you and just surrounded your ears, it was just amazing. And so here, I'm out on the track, I'm lapping this LFA, and Patrick Long, who, if you follow any type of American road racing, Patrick Long has been a Porsche Works driver for quite some time. He was actually testing a Daytona. I think it was, at that point, it was a Grand Am series, a Porsche, like a GT3 Porsche. So we were kind of lapping together. Obviously, he was going at a much higher rate than I was, as you can see here. But yeah, I mean, the experience of the car, I can tell you at the time, I think, Toyota had developed this car for many, many years, and they had a huge investment for this car to get completed. And what SavageGeese and Mark and whatnot did not mention is for every unit that's sold, there is a loss taken by Toyota in the grand scheme of how much they invested in the program itself. So I think it may have been due to economic conditions at that point. It was also due to the fact that the media didn't receive this car extremely well. It was very high priced. It was Lexus branded. The transmission seemed dated. Just the typical little car guys with the magazines, they complained about the transmission. But I can tell you that when I did end up seeing the review from Top Gear, Jeremy Clarkson, surprisingly, but not surprisingly in a sense, named it the best car he had ever driven.
Yes. still is. The Lexus LFA, because of the noise it makes principally.
It actually feels like you're sitting inside a machine.
There's something very unique about the way that this car was put together and developed, and I think that SavageGeese's video really gives you an instinct about that, about how much went into this car. It in very many ways reminded me of the Bugatti Veyron, to where it was more of an engineering exercise to see what could be done. It didn't take huge radical steps in terms of design language, and there's so much uniqueness to the body. In the hood lines, the air gates, that's not where, they didn't touch on that, and you should look into it. The lines of the hood created air gates. The mirrors funneled air around the A-pillar in a very particular way to push air into those side scoops. The aero development of that car is so advanced, but yet so subtle, that it influences the shape only slightly, but it was a very organic type of design. And it's a design I do think is very timeless because it didn't take any super aggressive steps like you see with, like, say, an Aventador or something that it's going to be very era specific, and you're going to be able to identify kind of the phase of time when that was trendy. You've not seen the prices change on these cars. They I think opened up around $350 when they were selling, and then with options could move up into the 500 range, but they haven't moved, and I think they're only going to go north from here. Certainly they're faster cars, more exotic, more engineering. I mean, you could spend your money in other ways, but the LFA is just something that's very unique, and I think it's one of those cars in some ways that was forgotten, but not. So that's about it, guys. I just wanted to make a quick video and kind of give you some highlights of my experience with the car. Feel free to leave a comment below. I would answer it in any way I can. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one.